Below is an in-depth report of Ohio government actions I could verify for 7-25-2026, with one important limitation. The search results provided are thin for that exact date, so the report necessarily emphasizes actions that were publicly reported around that day and activities whose timing is tied to late July 2026. Where the available evidence does not prove the event occurred on 7-25-2026 specifically, I say so directly. Major government actions Ohio did not appear to have a large statewide, one-day, cluster of new legislative enactments on 7-25-2026 in the materials provided. The most significant statewide executive and regulatory developments visible in the source set occurred earlier in the week, or were described as ongoing late July activity, rather than actions uniquely dated to July 25, 456. The clearest statewide policy action tied to this period was the Ohio EPA's abandonment of its proposed blanket wastewater discharge permit for data centers after more than 7,000 public comments and bipartisan criticism, according to reporting summarized in the search results. The agency said each facility will instead have to go through the individual NPDES permitting process, which is the standard wastewater discharge permitting pathway. 5. Legislative activities. The General Assembly was in summer recess, and one source explicitly says there were no committee hearings or voting sessions currently scheduled for the following week, indicating that formal legislative activity was largely paused during this period. 6. Several major bills had already moved through the legislative and executive process in the days immediately before 7-25-2026, and those actions continued to shape the state's policy environment on July 25. Governor Mike DeWine had signed 4 bills into law, including Senate Bill 262 on construction contract form deviations, Senate Bill 263 on streamlined reporting for professional employer organizations, Senate Bill 273, the Keep Them Safe Act, related to voluntary firearm storage and immunity protections, and House Bill 359, which created the Joshua Alert for missing children with autism or developmental disabilities. 2. Another major legislative action in the same late July period was the enactment of HB 455, the Education Omnibus Bill, which DeWine signed earlier in the week. The bill makes broad changes affecting public schools and the Department of Education and Workforce, including State Board of Education appointments, age and schooling certificate requirements, work-hour rules for minors under 16, and repeal of obsolete education statutes. Its effective date is October 9, 2026. 6. A separate legislative update noted that SB 315, dealing with alleged Medicaid fraud by home health care agencies, had already been signed by the governor on July 7 and would become effective October 5, 2026. 3. That is not a 7-25 action, but it remained relevant to Ohio policy in late July. Enforcement and regulatory actions. The Ohio EPA's decision on the data center wastewater discharge proposal was the most significant regulatory enforcement-style action visible in the sources for this period. The agency backed off the blanket permit concept and shifted to case-by-case individual permitting, a move reported as a response to public pressure and criticism. 5. The Ohio Supreme Court also issued a significant legal decision in the same general time frame. According to the reporting, the court ruled 6-1 that trial courts do not need to provide detailed explanations when denying post-conviction DNA testing requests. 5. A YouTube summary of Ohio government actions for July 21 also described the court as having accepted review in Chervenak Family Trust v. Ascent Resources Utica, LLC and deciding State v. Lash, which clarified standards for post-conviction DNA testing requests. 4. Because the two sources are not identical in how they frame the court's actions, the safest reading is that the Supreme Court took major procedural and criminal justice actions in late July. But the exact timing and scope should be treated carefully unless the underlying docket is checked directly. 4. 5. Public events and official outreach. The Ohio Department of Children and Youth held the Columbus All-Pro Dad Experience with LT. Governor Jim Tressel and Director Carr went participating, according to the July 21 Government Actions Summary. 4. That is the closest verified public event item in the source set, though the result does not prove it occurred on 7-25 specifically. The Ohio State Medical Board's July 2026 e-news also signaled multiple public-facing state actions in this same period, including updates to formal actions and site lists, physician application and renewal questions, public hearing notices, legislative changes, summer influenza surveillance, a well-being care service impact report, and the launch of the statewide Recovery Ohio Treatment Finder. 1. The result is a summary of the e-news content rather than a dated event log. So it shows active administrative communication, but not a specific 7-25 event. 1. Late July administrative context. By late July, the state government was clearly in a post-session implementation phase. DeWine had already signed the major bills noted above, and the General Assembly was on recess. 2.6. Agencies were focusing on implementation, public comment response, and rollout of new systems, such as the Joshua Alert and Recovery Ohio Treatment Finder initiative. 1.2. What can be said with confidence about 7-25-2026, the most defensible description of Ohio government activity for 7-25-2026, based on the evidence provided, is that it was a late July implementation and regulatory day rather than a day of major new statewide legislative passage. The headline development was the Ohio EPA's retreat from the blanket data center discharge permit proposal, while the legislative branch remained in recess, and the executive branch was carrying forward recently signed laws and administrative rollouts. 5.6. If you want, I can turn this into a stricter day-by-day incident log for 7-25-2026 only. But I would need either additional search results or permission to include cautious inference where the date is not explicitly verified.